I'm Sarah at Sept. We just finished hosting I think it was a very successful orangutan workshop, and we were very honored to have Willie join us last night to give our closing keynote address, and especially honored to have him stay an extra night to be able to talk to all of you. I don't think I can do an introduction of Willie Smits justice beyond saying that he's always been one of my heroes. I've known him for a number of years now. And we're thrilled that I can tell you to have him here. But I'm going to let Rich Zimmerman do his actual introduction. Rich is a new friend of mine, but is the founding director of an organization called Orangutan Outreach, and I know he'll be showing you his web address on his back multiple times. Please do check it out. It's an amazing organization. They do really great work. And with that, I'll let Rich tell you about tonight's speaker. Thanks so much.
It's very difficult to introduce Willie Smits. I can do that, although it's personal about the great this man is. He's an orangutan champion. He is the world's leading expert on anything having to do with orangutans. And the fact that you're here means you're at least curious about orangutans. Zoo Atlanta happens to be one of the most fantastic facilities that I've ever seen, where there are orangutans, and it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you to all of Atlanta people.
I can't hear what he said.
Willie Smits is great. He's a hero. He's one of he's the smartest man in the room, almost. When you think of a great idea, you think, oh, Willie. I'm a bit speechless. You're going to hear someone who knows so much and has so much to offer to the world. On my website, reddit.org, we have links to videos of Willie that are special. But to hear Willie speak live, and to feel his passion, his energy, his knowledge, his experience firsthand is truly visceral. You will feel it in your tummies when he speaks. What else to say? Anything? Welcome to Willie Smits.
Can you hear this one? Is my voice clear enough?
I don't know if I can hear you.
Okay, well, can everyone else hear me? Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be back here in Atlanta. It's the fourth time I'm here now, and it was good to see Jantek again, see old friends, meet David again, Lori. Yeah, great fun to be back here and see especially that the orangutans here have no stress. They're really having a good time, and they're so uninhibited, so it's really good. Yesterday I spoke about some zoo things, I spoke about designs of facilities, I spoke about the oil palm problem, I spoke about providing alternatives to people. And tonight I would like to show you something about a project that I've set up over the last 6-7 years in Indonesia, which was done for orangutans. There's a few hundred orangutans living there. But most of all, I would like to tell you a little bit how to set up life in harmony, because we may care about orangutans, but it is not good enough to say, you may not kill those orangutans, thou shalt not cut those trees, or whatever. It doesn't work that way. In a society, everything is interdependent, everything everything is connected to something else. That was what someone said. If you pull on one thing of nature, you will find that everything else is connected to it. And the way to formulate future solutions is exactly to work and to think and to act as nature does it. Nature doesn't know a concept of waste. Everything needs to be utilized and not thrown away. So I'm going to talk about orangutans. Oh, the screen is gone. And I'll be talking about this project, Samboja Lestari. Samboja is the name of the place, and Lestari means forever. That's my hope, that we can create a place where we can create life in harmony, where orangutans and many, many other animals can find a very good place, but also a place which has an economic value and which has a built-in ecological sustainability because the social acceptance is that high. You've heard this thing about people, profit, planet many times. This is an attempt to actually put it into practice. So we're in, it would be nice to have a stick or something, but we're on the east coast of Borneo, and these were the forests that brought me there. I started off as a soil scientist, a geneticist, and a forester. My first PhD was in microbiology, so I did very different things, and it was only by accident that I came across a dying orangutan baby on the market in Balikpapan, and that's my Uche. And this is Bintang, her second son, her first son, Matahari, and Bintang. They are both living now in the Sungai Wine forest. But that forest is a special forest, small, it's important for the water supply of a big city, so we were able to protect that with great difficulties, but many of the other forests are not doing so well. So many of the other orangutans, as we have heard many times, are being threatened by huge human activities, and one of those is the oil palm plantation program. And what is happening now, all the good forests, all the lowland good soils are now basically gone. And people are now entering into these peat swamp areas. Now peat swamps are huge masses of organic material. And once you cut those and burn them, and you get all this release of CO2. You don't even need to burn it. This here is like a silent volcano emitting millions of tons of CO2 every year. And when we are looking at how we could actually save some money for our own pockets in preventing climate change, you can achieve like 100 times more per dollar out there by helping orangutans than you can in any way by replacing your light bulbs or cutting back on your air conditioning or whatever. So to see the problems that the orangutans are facing in the palm oil. Yes, those are not nice pictures, but those are the things we see every day. Orangutans still being used as prostitutes, their meat still being eaten. Yeah, okay, I will go on quickly, but these things...
Laser pointer. Sorry, our laser pointer doesn't work on the screen, and Willie asked me to find him a stick.
We definitely need a stick to beat with if you see those horrible images there. And then people have burned that land. Once the forest is gone, the people keep using the land, keep burning it, whatever comes back, and after a while, this is what you end up with, just a barren area of grasslands. And this is where I started working in East Kalimantan, because one day my accountant told me, come with me, Pak Willie. Pak means Mr. or Father, a little bit honorable title. Pak Willie, that's my name in Indonesia. Come. And he took me to a hill, a little bit to the right of this place here. And it was very impressive, because when I stood there, there was not a single sound. There were no birds, no animals. There was no rustling of leaves. There was only this yellow, silent grass. Not even insects you could hear there. this here is a biological desert. There's no more nutrients in the soil. All the life is gone. No people can survive here. There's only erosion and flooding, and the moment the rain stops, the rivers fall dry, and it is a pure desert where nobody really has any value left. We have 28 million hectares of this land in Indonesia, totally destroyed, nothing left. So my accountant knew that I had been training over 1,000 foresters, planting hundreds of millions of new trees all over, and he's a farmer from Java, an island very overpopulated, and he said, "But Willie, if you're that good, we should be planting a forest here." Now then, that would be really something. And I thought,
Can you hear him?
Yes, I can, Mom.
actually, this guy may have a point. So I thought, yeah, if I take this place here, I might actually prevent people from saying, yeah, after it succeeds, yeah, but you had this, or the soil was better. So I thought, yes, I should start at the worst possible place. So this might actually be the place. If I can do it here, nobody has an excuse to say, yeah, but we cannot. Yes, you can. You can do something there. That was the idea. So I took up the challenge of this accountant and started a project here. And of course I had to formulate carefully the basic principles. And I wanted to show that when you start from an area totally devoid of vegetation, that it is still possible to make that into a tropical rainforest, a forest that can fulfill all ecological functions. Now many of you may think a forest has been there forever, millions of years old rainforest, and you think it is so susceptible, you cannot disturb a single part out of it. That's not true. A forest is a very dynamic system, where at any moment trees are falling down and dying and young ones are growing up. These forests have gone through climate change many times as well. And in the Amazon, we know that dozens of times there were only pockets of forest left in which genetic diversification took place, and from there the trees spread out again. So it is maybe not possible to make exactly the same forest as there was before, but it should be possible to recreate something dynamic, something that can keep itself intact again. And that was what I set out to do. And I wanted to make sure that the land had a secure legal status. So I decided, because I had done so many projects, and always if there's a change of government, there's a new policy, and everything you've done is for nothing against. I thought, no, I need a place where I can show it over a longer period. Not just 1 or 2 year project and then move out, have a nice glossy report and brochure, and that's it. Applause, and it's not it. And making sure that this project was going to be supported by the welfare of the local people. At the same time, of course, I was also thinking of my orangutans. I've been out everywhere in the fields rescuing orangutans and seeing their forests disappearing. I've worked with radar satellite technologies. I have cooperations with NASA, the European Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency, Dornier from Germany, and Lapam from Indonesia. And looking at those satellite images doesn't make you very happy. You're really seeing how we are eating into the last forests of our world. So, releasing our orangutans, first in Morantes, you had to drive 5 hours through virgin forest to get there. Now the illegal loggers are so close to the release site, it really scares me. And it's very hard to protect those forests because corruption in my country, I'm an Indonesian national, is still unfortunately huge. And it's very often the high officials and the police and the army themselves who are supposed to be enforcing nature conservation laws that are causing the problem. So how do we keep those forests intact? I thought as a backup option, I should create a forest that can support orangutans. So most of the trees in this forest I've grown from seeds that were collected from the excrements of wild orangutans. and I've planted about 50 times more fruit trees per hectare than a normal rainforest would have. So I would have a carrying capacity that at least 1,000 orangutans could be living in a 5,000 acre cage, if you would like to see it that way. But at least 5,000 acres is a lot better than sitting behind bars. And I wanted to make sure that all the way that I was going to do this, I was going to have the scientific data and the proof how it was done. I have been collecting the cost data. This is where we are, in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, a very large country. And this is the area where I started doing it, and I started to monitor how many people had worked, how many days for what activity, and how much did it cost to do the compost production, and how much time did it need for the tree to grow how many meters, so that I could simulate and replicate all of this. This is the area where we started. Now I feel like a professor again. And it was, as you see, totally yellow. This here is the Sumerwine forest, and here is the area where my Uje lives. Uje and her 2 babies, soon 3 babies already. And there is a big oil city, here's the airport, nearby. And this place had been totally denuded for so many years. We'll have a look at it, that there was really nothing left. In 2002, when I started there, this was the poorest district in the whole province of East Kalimantan. And about 50% of the people were without a job. And we had lots of problems with crime. We had the flooding every year, we had the fires. There was no productivity in the land left, and people even spent a huge amount of money just on getting drinking water. The life expectancy was one of the worst in all of Borneo, and there was a total extinction of plant and animal life. So this was not a good place to start. So in 2006, 4 years later, we were above average in income for the whole district of the people, and the health of the people had improved tremendously. The hospital had much too many beds instead. There was no more flooding, no more fires, and the people themselves started to implement some of the techniques that I had been using there. And now we have 137 species of birds living there, 32 species of reptiles, 9 species of primates, and all the insects, the cicadas, are singing again in this forest. And at the same time, we've created about 3,000 permanent jobs from an area which had been given up before. And so that is quite interesting to see how the change came about and how we came to this starting position. So it was a virgin forest, and people came, they used it until 1964, when this new road came in and everybody could steal the last bit of forest that was left. Then the forest became more susceptible to fires, and the climate change, El Nino, became ever more frequent and ever more intensive. In this area, in 1956, 2 very famous climate scientists, Schmidt and Ferguson, made the classification of the world's climates. And they based it upon 60 years of data that was a tropical rainforest climate. When I came there in 1980, 24 years later, there was nothing left of the climate they had described over that whole period. So here we can actually see what is happening. There's a disaster taking place as I speak here. For the last 12 years, not a single seedling of the tropical hardwood trees has grown up in the forest of Borneo. Not a single one. They used to have this mass flowering every 4 or 5 years after a mild El Nino. All these trees would flower and fruit and drop their seeds at the same time, because the population of predators eating those seeds would have become very low in between the years that there is no fruit to destroy all of them. So there will be millions of seedlings left, even if the rats and the squirrels and the pigs and everything eat their belly full. But now the climate trigger has become so worse and so interrupted as a result of global warming that now the trees do no longer flower in the same rhythm, and all the seeds get destroyed from the trees flowering one by one. So at this moment, we are truly witnessing the extinction of the tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia. Nobody's talking about it because it's a very silent process, but it's going on. So we had those fires there, and since 1982, it has burned several times a year. And what the people do is they make this slash and burn agriculture because they can't afford to buy expensive fertilizer. So they make the ash of the trees their fertilizer. And when this gets on a bigger scale, you start losing all of the forest canopy, and the local climate is changing even faster. So this here is the area where I started. You can look it up on Google Earth, and you can see there was really not a single tree when we started off here. And here you can see where I started building our little office, a little white building with a brown roof on top of that hill. I started on the top of a hill, and now that top of a hill is in the middle of a very large expanse of green forest. So, which is supporting all that. So, if it's that simple, then what happened there? Well, we did a couple of things. First of all, as I told you, we bought the land from the local people. Those were the people then that we gave jobs, and we involved in fighting the fires. Fires is the main thing to deal with. Then we used agroforestry, using a combination of reforestation and agriculture. So there would be crops, there would be income for the people to do the reforestation. Only then we started building the infrastructure, investing in that. Normally if you make a project, you start building your office first, and secondly just concentrated on the cheaper stuff. And we set up a good management and made sure that it was supported by a lot of research, but always in every phase the project would benefit the local people. So we truly tried to implement the people, profit, planet principles, but added clear legal statements for the land so people would recognize it and make it based upon science. And then we made sure that all of these, what you normally know from the business community, those principles and sustainability, risk avoidance, long-term planning were implemented. If you have a forest national park, there's not a single protected forest area in Indonesia where no illegal logging is taking place. That is a very go from this grassland to a forest condition. And then very practically formulate what are the inputs that we can utilize. For example, the choice of trees or what kind of fertilizer. And then looking at what outputs can we expect from it and what measurable parameters can we use to prove that we got there. So what we do is we formulate a recipe to go from the beginning to the end, and this recipe becomes now the key for upscaling and applying this on other places. For example, in this grassland we're going planting these trees like the Acacia Magnum, which is not a tropical rainforest tree, but it's a pioneer. You can see them there in the back. This tree has special bacteria on the roots that help fix nitrogen from the air and can make the soil a bit more fertile. So that is the first thing we want. We want to protect the soil. We want to shade out the grasses there. The grasses are actually exuding poison. There's a kind of cyanide coming out of the roots of this grass, which is called Temperata cylindrica, that prevents the germination of tree seeds. It's called allelopathy. And you need to get rid of that grass in order for the forest to grow well. But to do it with poison, Roundup or something is not a good choice. And after 8 years, you can get construction timber of these acacias, but it can easily rot unless you treat it in a good way. And for that you can use an old technique from Japan, building the temples, by using the peels of bamboo, and the smoke becomes like a natural preservative against fungi and insects. But if we would be planting bamboo in that area, it's very susceptible to fire. So we could lose everything. So what do? We only plant the bamboo later on, after we've already established the area, and only along the waterways. Why? So it can filter the water, and there's less sediment going into the rivers, and the bamboo itself can provide raw material, etc., etc. Now also later on I'll come back to this wood, how it is also not just spatially planned, but also in time it has been worked out quite well. It's like a project, setting up a new business somewhere. And you need to look spatially and temporally how you are going to roll out. Here's another recipe. You start planting these trees here in these rows, and you plant in between tomatoes or chilies or pineapple in this case, so that the people will have an early income, and at the same time we can reduce the competition for the trees, and while the organic fertilizer for the pineapple is also helping our trees to grow. Now the farmers, they got now land back, because we provide them the same land that they sold to us, but now they can grow their crops in there. And the system will keep the people salaried. At the same time, having this organically growing food here, our hundreds of orangutans there can benefit, because we have a market. And there are people here that have adopted orangutans through redapes.org, and that money we can use to buy fruits, and those are of course the ones grown by the people. So they get income, they get their own food, the orangutans get healthy food, and we can reduce the expenditures while speeding up the whole generation of the forest. You have to look for those combinations. So beautiful theories, and you see that, but is it really that easy? Well, let's look at the nasty problem that we face with climate change. We have the El Niños, and the fires are a huge problem in East Kalimantan. In 1997-1998, we spent 3 months with all the lights on, day and night. These automatic lights that go on when it's dark, they never went off for 3 months because the smoke was that thick. And right now, the smoke is coming back. 6 days ago, I was there in Borneo, and I smelled the same smell that still brings back nightmares. If I think about the hundreds of rescue missions that we did to save the orangutans from the fire. It started burning in January, in February, March, April, May. In just a matter of months, we lost 5.5 million hectares. That's like 13 million acres. You just guys got a big news item in California. There's something else going on in Borneo. And those fires are really killing the orangutans. And we have 10,000s of these underground coal fires. And they keep smoldering. You have them in Pennsylvania, right? Those layers where the soil comes crashing down. Well, we have 10,000s of these smaller ones. And whenever there's a dry season, the soil starts cracking. Oxygen can get to the smoldering coal, and flames come out, and all over you have these new fires coming again and again. And it's very hard to get rid of them. This was how it looked like in 97-98 for months in a row. This was actually a rare moment where we could actually see the sun. So otherwise it's just black, and I can't show you how it really is. We did a study together with CARE, and 60,000 children that were monitored did not gain any weight. They lost on average 10 IQ points because of malnutrition. People even ate the seeds of the rice that was supposed to become the next rice crop. And those disasters, those silent disasters, people don't hear about them, but this year it's going to happen again. The rivers fall dry, the boats cannot bring in any supplies, those people are isolated. And these grasslands, when there's a fire, it spreads immediately through it. And again, you lose the last bit of organic material, and the first rain that falls down flushes all those minerals and material into the sea and kills off the coral reefs there, so there will be less fish for the people to catch catch because the coral reefs are the breeding grounds of the fish. So it's just one disaster, one piece connected to the other, all starting with that forest. So I wanted to make a recipe how to deal with the fire. First thing is involving the local people, but you also need to have a longer term because you can't go on forever extinguishing, fighting fires. So I made this ring of sugar palms around it. Now you have oil palms, bad. If you plant them on the wrong places, what I talked about yesterday. And sugar palms happen to be very good because they don't need any fertilizer, no pesticides, and they provide 65 different products for the local people, and they can grow because they have no pest and diseases, and they yield an income every day because you can tap them, and the only thing you remove is sugar. Everything of the tree, whether it's the timber or the fibers or the seeds or the sugar in the water that's dripping, all of it is made from sugar molecules in polymers that becomes lignin, hemicellulose, cellulose becomes timber. So it's basically sugar, the only product that you harvest. And sugar is the result of photosynthesis, carbon dioxide gas from the air, rain from the air, and sunlight. And that's all combined in those green leaves to become sugar, the energy carrier of the world, the basic process through which we have organic material, peat, coal, gas, oil. It's all coming from sunshine captured in the past. So these sugar palms are very good. And I put now a ring around it because the sugar palms are fire resistant and can hold back fire. And I do something else with water, which I will talk about later. So in that ring area, we did reforestation, where an area will come up that can support thousands of orangutans. And in the middle, I have my research facilities. This is what the sugar palm forest looks like that has been planted around the area and can be tapped, and people can get income from that. And a very good income, because you can actually produce like 6 times more energy per hectare per year from critical lands compared to sugarcane, which is now used to take land and to get ethanol to you here in the United States. So you become less dependent upon the oil from the Middle East. But that sugarcane is taking away the very best flat, fertile land with water, needs a lot of fertilizer, and the soy farmers are being pushed deeper into the jungle and are causing more deforestation in the Amazon as a result. But if you have a tree, a forest, and a tree that can only grow in a mixed forest, it cannot grow in monoculture, it cannot grow in a virgin rainforest, it can only grow in this mixed secondary forest, so it's ideal for our purpose. Then you have something where you can restore the climate, the ecology, and at the same time provide a lot of jobs. Then we plant this thorny fence of living palms in a ring around the area. I'm going to go back here. This ring, this red one, that are those thorny palms. So they have nice fruits, and the orangutans can eat them on the inside, and the can eat them on the outside of the fence. We planted very dense. And that becomes the natural boundary to keep the orangutans inside and the people outside, and then we have a nice deal that I will talk about. So here's the actual area. It's of course not perfectly round. They had to buy all those pieces one by one. And if you look at it, I designed it in such a way that we would learn as much as possible. So I've been planting 1,232 different tree species in this area in different mixtures. There's about 2,000 different planting trials in here that we all monitor and measure. In America I don't know, but in Europe I do. You know how many tree species, natural wild tree species we have in Europe, from the Ural all the way up including England? 165. Here's 1,232 different species. So it's a lot of work, because you have to know how to grow all those plants. And we have meters and meters of documents. We bought this acre by acre, this piece of land, from the local people, and made these certificates based on our foundation. And then, what's going on here? Did I go back? Okay. I want to show you the islands in this map here. This is where we have the sick orangutans living, the ones with hepatitis B and tuberculosis, the ones that cannot be mixed with the healthy ones that we want to really respect. But we can monitor every single tree from space here because we have this cooperation. And if you compare that with oil palms, there's just huge. People have always assumed that these monocultures are wonderful because you can control them. Yeah? They have all these practical mechanization possibilities, and they are scalable. They are clear for an investor what they will bring. Those are the practical reasons. But they also have a lot of disadvantages. They are not that predictable because pests and diseases can come up, and you have always the problem that with the crops you remove nutrients from the soil. So we want to have a system which is in balance, just like nature. As many trees die, as trees grow up, the nutrients all stay in that vegetation. Now having oil palm or having sugarcane or having corn, what is happening? The corn has to grow up, the sugarcane has to grow up, and then it stores the sugar in an organ. Yeah? And that stems of sugarcane, the corn cobs, or the bunches of the oil palm is what you harvest. So with those fruits and those bunches, organs, you remove nutrients from the soil. So the next rotation, you have to add huge quantities of nutrients back to the soil in order to keep production going. So if you have the sugar palms and you have an organic system where you do not use any of the nutrients as a product out of the system, you can keep it sustainable. So if we look at how a natural forest grows, it has roots that go deep into the soil that are brought up to the surface, and the leaves that are hanging from the trees that fall on the ground are directly recycled through fungi that capture these nutrients and bring them back in the plants that have just dropped those leaves. So if you have a natural forest, you have layers. If you have only one species, you can only use a very small percentage of the light that is falling on the earth. So you're losing, you're not efficient. If we make a system, we should try to imitate nature, making these combinations, starting with the agricultural crops, but also later on do mixed systems. Like in the past, the people all knew it. Yeah, but it's the modern, fantastic technology, manipulating genes and whatever, that allow you to make pest-resistant seeds or plants that will not die when you spray Roundup, so you can just use the poison to kill everything else and create that controllable monoculture system. But in a system with multi-layers, you can store more biomass and you have less risks of diseases, and you can create more products. For example, the Maya, when they would plant corn, how did they do it? They would plant corn, but after 3 weeks they would plant beans. Why? Because the beans could then grow along with the stalk, using the stalk as the thing to climb on. And then 3 weeks later they would plant the cucumbers or aubergines in between, and those would grow on the ground and have these big leaves. Why? Because they would shade out the wheat underneath. They would keep the soil cool, so more nutrients could be taken up, and they would reduce the evapotranspiration. So you have now only 90% of the productivity of the corn, but you still have also 70% of the productivity of the beans, and about 60% of the cucumbers underneath. So all of them together, more than double the productivity of your system by making better use of that space above and underneath the ground. So that's basically what we should be imitating nature. And we should be doing the same. If we want to grow forests like we have to do there, how does nature do it? If there's an empty place, all of a sudden you see those pioneer trees that grow very fast, like that acacia I just showed you, and they will restore the microclimate. Later on, other species migrate in these cooler conditions and they start growing up there. So if we do that, we can also create more biomass, and then we introduce the correct fungi and bacteria, because all of the plants in the tropics, they have like a symbiotic association with microorganisms. It's not the tree that is taking up those nutrients, no, it's the fungi and the bacteria. The bacteria release minerals from the mineral component of the soil, they give it to the fungi give it to the plant roots, and the plant gives sugar back to the fungi, which they cannot produce themselves in the dark conditions underneath the ground. So they all work together. So if you plant trees, it's not good enough. You have to have the right bacteria, the right fungi for the right soil type, and the right tree species in the right combination in order to get that productivity back. So is it easy? No. Can it be done? Yes. We've been planting trees. Here's just a few of them, 1,330 and 232 tree species. There's now 14 more than those. And all those names passing by. And now let's skip this. And yeah, it's a long protection. It takes a couple of minutes just to see the names flash by. And what we also did, we were mapping the soil, but we were not doing it with all these expensive analyses. That's old technique. No. If you ask a Dayak, these former headhunters of Borneo, I've been living with them for about 6 months in the jungle. I learned so much. So many things you will never be able to learn at any university anywhere in the world. Know-how that they know and which has not been written down. They go in their boat and look around there. There's an Antiaris toxicale. They call it Ipur. That's the name of that Morasi tree. And look, there's this special grass growing. Wait, go to the side of the river here. They look around. Yeah, there's this herb here. Okay, that's good. This is soil where I can plant rice. You see, there are so many trees, so I need so many access, so many people, so many days. Now I'm going to need 5 cans of seeds, and I will get about 20 bags of seeds out of it. And they make that calculation. They've done their soil study. They've done their economic analysis. They have looked at the labor opportunities, and then they burn down. They cut down the trees. They burn, and they grow their rice. But while they are growing their rice, they also grow bananas and rattan plants and fruit trees. So after 2 years, when the whole thing is covered up, they leave the land and they come back to harvest the fruits and to harvest the rattan to make furniture. And after maybe 10 years, then they burn it again, and the soil has recovered. It has become fertile again. So they look at those plants, and by looking at these herbs, you can actually say which soil is the best. And in this area, we monitored every single tree that we planted in these grasslands. And 10% of it is actually measured to find out what the biomass is. We have a PhD student that is also looking at the carbon in the soil. We have to monitor all those things. And then we make a integrated approach. For example, here we have a garbage dump. We're happily taking the garbage from the city because we can do the recycling. We have some building materials there, but most of all, we can burn some of it. So we have an energy source which can be added by all the dead wood that is still laying around and which is causing fire risk problems. These trees that are standing there, they are like chimneys. When there is a fire, the fire goes through the chimney. There's these resin particles inside. They will be thrown out like a fire thrower and everything can burn. So we need, when we take those trees, we reduce the fire risk and we can use the energy to produce our own electricity. Sustainable later on by the thinning wood, using that as an energy source, we become energy independent. But the compost, the organic material, is the most important to enrich that area, to enhance the growth. And then when we have a garbage dump, there's still a little bit of material left which has to go in these sanitary landfills. So we're making a water project, a water treatment I'll come back to the water project, is resulting in silt, very fine silt, which happens to be the perfect material to put on top of the landfill, so you can capture the methane gas underneath, and you can use the gas that then still comes out as an additional energy source while impacting the environment in a minimal way. So putting those next to each other, you have a place to bring that sediment. And I can talk for hours about just this one method to do that. We are now making these lakes. This project has just last Monday been approved. I had to work for 4.5 years on this to make this whole design. There's an operating included 5,000 what? I didn't do that. For some of our staff, but there's some other lakes with other names as well. So we start in this area with agroforestry, mixing the crops and the seedlings. Here's a nursery, a very simple one, where they have grown all these plants. And this nursery looks quite different. Normally you see vast green areas, but look here, almost every square meter is different plants, because it's so small, the project, and to bring in so many species. So you must know how to germinate all those different seeds, or how to make cuttings, or how to do air layering. So it does take a bit of work, and you need to bring in all those fungi, all those bacteria that we are growing with cowpea and palm juice. Mixing that creates the perfect environment how we can grow with local materials, all these microorganisms that we can then spread in the soil, and that will help the trees grow. So we can do it with agroforestry, like there in the middle, but if we don't have enough people, because the soil brings so much, but it also needs a lot of labor, that we can't use it everywhere. So here we are planting the crops with the trees in between. Here we have planted trees directly into these grasslands. That is how we had to mix it. So it's not one recipe, because if you don't have enough people, you have to go for the second best choice. And you have to be very practical in your planning. And then we planted the sugar palms around it. These are the sugar palms. See, they have these spines that can be used as centerfold, as pens, and the fibers, which are stronger than stainless steel. Even the cables, you can eat the fruits, you can eat the heart, you can use the sapo, you can use the juice from it, you have the leaves as building and fuel material. Everything is usable, and you create food security instead of reducing food security. And we've been planting those in a ring in mixed forest around Samboja. Here you see rubber trees, you see bananas, you see these zingiberacea, the medicinal plants in between. Every component of this forest has to have a function. So let's look. This here, we started planting. This is the view from the ground in the grass. Now I'll take you a little bit higher up. And then when these trees that have been planted in the grass grow up, we do a little bit of maintenance, weeding around them. This is after about 6 months. Then until 1.5 years, you can still harvest the papayas, the bananas, but the trees in between those are still growing higher and higher. And after 4 years, you have a mixed forest. So you can do it that in every moment in time, this forest is bringing something. Yeah? And that money is a great thing to speed up things in the world. And I've also now developed this as a company, because for 30 years I've been trying to change people's attitudes. And that seems to be very hard. Now there's an economic crisis. Immediately, Richard tells me, sorry, people have a hard time, you cannot send so much money for buying fruits or helping the orangutans. You become very dependent on outside factors that you cannot control. So I wanted to control a system that can sustain itself, and the water can do it. Here we have an inlet strip with all these tea trees. Here is Melina. Here we have planted acacia trees. So let's look at that area. This is a year later. We started planting the trees right next to this tower that we are building there. And then, yeah, a few years later, this is already green. These trees are now not here, but they are here. They're now 34 meters high, and underneath these trees are a lot of other species growing. The air temperature above our forest has gone down 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. The humidity is up 10%. The cloud cover is up even more. I'm going to show you the data. We have all these species, all these benefits. Let's have a look. This area we can monitor. This is how we started. And then it turns into this, and you can monitor it, how it becomes a forest. We are monitoring how this explosion of species, you can just follow exactly, because we have a special software and a special system to enter the data in the field with these Google Android phones. You just take a picture, you know where you are, the compass direction, you can measure the tree, and you can enter those data straight into a database that we are now making for the whole world, so that next year you will be able to use your phone to do the same thing, and that you will be able to map into Google Earth the species diversity of the world. What you are actually don't know is you have become a climate change measurement device, a real-time device. Because if a lot of people in a certain area find a new kind of butterfly, and it's brought up on the net there, you know that the temperature has changed so much. Now you know your climate change effect. You can take action where it's most needed. But these tools we're also developing there. We use this is the software that we have produced there. So yes, I'm working with orangutans. I love orangutans, but I need to do some other stuff to make sure that they will have a future. Because as long as we are only rescuing the babies, we are only doing symptom treatment. We are not saving the orangutans as a species. For that, you need to have integrated approaches. Okay, and we can help the decision makers. This is the most recent data. So, this is some modular study. It's pretty clear that we are doing good. Over time, how the species are developing, which species are replacing what species in a natural succession. And we can now use these data to predict what would happen if there is a forest area here and you would make a road through it. This one hill of biodiversity would become two much lower hills separately. So you can now start to evaluate the effects and make this information available to the world. I also built this eco-lodge here. This tree is now up to the roof already. This is just in 6 months. And this eco-lodge I built not so much as a business, although it does bring in money, but for people also that they can come and work and plant trees and clean some cages and actually spend a bit more time. You are now sitting here listening to me for 1 hour. I'm afraid it's going to be a few more minutes. And you will maybe remember, oh, that was a very interesting evening, a very interesting talk. You know, they grew a forest, but that's it. But if you've spent a week or 2 weeks there, you've been planting those trees yourself, you're never going to forget it. You're going to tell your neighbors. You know, this is how we should save the world. So that is why I built this eco-lodge with all these materials and invite people to come. This is where I built it 4 years ago. Started building it like that. This is in 2008. You think, wow, we've done it. The thing is sinking into the forest. But right now, there have been some corruptors, and we were supposed to get all the land to the coast. Because I wanted from the sea all the way to this area in the middle where I've been planting trees to create a highway for clouds. Yeah, because if you have open land, the sun radiates on the soil and you get heat back. When you walk outside on the asphalt or the concrete, you just hold your hand, you can feel the heat coming up. Yeah? And when there's a fire, you see the paper flying up, the air goes up. So the air pushes back clouds. Clouds can't come. But if you create a cool place, forest, then you create a cool zone where clouds can actually accumulate and can go deeper into the land. So that was what I was planning to do as a regional development. But now, unfortunately, people have started opening that land. This is also 2 weeks ago, and the fires are back. You see, the lodge is deeper and deeper into the jungle. Here is our facility for the sun bears. Here are the orangutan cages. Down here are the islands. But outside there, coal miners, people from the city, have now bribed the local officials. And it's a pity. If we had had more money, we would have been able to do a better job. So it's not clear-cut success or anything. It's a constant struggle. But you have to make systems that can show you. So we have this machine here on top of our building. It's called a transponder. And this transponder sends out the signals from the European Space Agency, and if there's a satellite coming over here, beep, 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 and then there's a click, and that's it. And then the thing has shot a radar signal that produces a cross in the radar picture that the satellite is making. That satellite is coming by at 7,000 kilometers a minute, and that machine is so accurate that it can actually hit that small antenna and produce that signal there. So now those pictures can be used by the scientists around the world to calibrate their images. Because these satellites are not flying exactly on top of a place where they take a picture. No, they take it from the side. If you take it from the side, you cannot actually see how big is this area. So you need to correct it. By having this cross in there, you can do something we call orthorectification. You can make the pictures flat in the original size, and you can put them on top of each other, exactly using that cross in the picture. And now you can do a lot of fun things with it, because you now know how high your satellite is flying. Is it still in the correct place? Do we need to make some adjustments? And the big advantage for me is I get 28,000 euros a year for operating that machine. It costs me about as much to keep up the satellite link that the European Space Agency is using to control this thing. But we're on the equator. We are the best location. There's only 2 of those in the world. The big thing is we get thousands of images for free, because everybody who wants to make use of this calibration needs to take a picture of my forest. And at the same time, I've been measuring all those trees. I've been looking at how much carbon is related, and I've been keeping track how much did it cost to grow this particular piece of forest. And now I can measure from space with all these different satellite techniques how much carbon is there. So if you guys want to invest in climate change prevention, I have the tool to give you the transparency how to measure it. So this one small piece of grassland turning into forest is much more than just a forest. It's much more than just a place where some animals can live and where people can make jobs. We're actually creating a model that can be used for the world. We have also some of these aluminium boxes in combination with that expensive tool. We can now get these kinds of images. So if you look at that little square up there, that's this one here, and a radar image is not just a picture. No, a radar can go through the cloud day and night, and you can measure the height of the different points. So if you connect the dots, this height, this height, this height, you now get a shape, and you can make a 3-position map, and that's what we are doing there with some watch as well. And now you can assume that under each of these 3 crowns there is a stem. So now you can start modeling how to harvest, how to manage that forest. What we have also done, and what with the SketchUp tool of Google, is producing parametric trees. We grow trees in a computer, but not like the ones that you can buy from the internet, and now you put them in your garden and it looks beautiful as it's going to look like. No, these are real trees. They are growing according to a genetic formula. There's not a single tree which is the same as another one, and still all of you are able to tell, well, I hope, this is an oak tree, or this is a pine tree. You know, a pine, it has these branches. Still, if you put 2 of them next to each other, they don't look the same. Because there's the genetic formula, what branching pattern, There's the physiological aging, which is interacting with a lot of other factors, and competition, soil type, temperature, climate are influencing how the form of the tree is going to be. But we cracked the puzzle. So we can now grow trees in the computer as they are in the wild, and we can measure the interactions. We can predict how much carbon, how many jobs, how much money is going to come out of these systems, so that people are willing to implement it. That's why we make use of these more advanced technologies. We have a GPS system, a digital, differential GPS, which anyway, we have all these positions of the trees very exactly. So we know exactly in what spot we have planted what tree, and we can see that on these satellite images, and we can continue to monitor these trees as they grow up. So now let's get to the value, to the water. Water in the tropics, tropical rainforest climate, can't be true. You must be joking. No, it's not. And there are many places that have the same problem as the city of Balikpapan. This is economically the most important city in Indonesia, because they have the oil refineries here and these vast oil reserves, but they needed a safe harbor. So they came up with the location of this city. There were only a few houses, 13 houses here in 1900, and it became a boom town. But it's located on a peninsula, so it's for 80% surrounded by salt water. And another problem was that people didn't realize they had water here from artesic springs, fresh water coming up. But the water came from here, and it went underneath the soil to the city. And then they made a transmigration project up there. So every bit of forest was lost. And I already predicted it 18 years ago, is that in 18 years the water should be finished. And in 20, and it took 18 years, and indeed now they have to pump up the water from 200 to 250 meters, and since last year salt water is coming underneath this city. They've lost their water, and the only good forest is where Uche is living. So Uche is protecting the sweet water for their oil refineries, which they use to cool the installations, so they can produce more oil, so they can produce more electricity, so they can do desalinization of seawater, so they can produce more oil, and they can produce more. It is so stupid. The water there has such a huge value, and they built a dam here. But look, there's no forest around it, so the sedimentation, the erosion, is clogging up this lake. They spent $8 million making it higher, so they would have a little bit extra water for a little bit more time in the dry season. Now, instead of 2 weeks, it takes 3 weeks before you run out of water. But here we have created an area with higher humidity, lower temperatures, and a sponge, because the roots in the soil and the leaf material becomes like a sponge. When raindrops fall, they don't splash off. No, they soak into the soil and become soil water. They become aquifers. And the sponge, that organic material, can hold water and release it more slowly. And that is a very valuable function. So most people, if you would like to make a water reservoir, you would probably think of making a lake, putting in a dam like everyone else, right? Okay, you won't make a lake. Everybody sleeping over there? If I'm going too technical, tell me. Yeah, I'll try to keep it simple. What I did is I bought this hill in the middle, and then I extended the area to the sides. I wanted to create a ring of dams, and by doing the reforestation, I wanted to get more rainfall, I wanted to have less erosion, and I wanted the soil water to go up as a result of the better infiltration of water into the soil. And this is exactly how it worked. I calculated how big an area I had to buy, a minimum of 3,000 acres, so we bought 5,000 acres now. And exactly at the moment that we planted 3,000 acres, the climate started to change. These models that the International Climate Change Panel is producing are actually working. Yeah? So now soil water has gone up 5 meters. Now we're going to make a ring of dams around the area, and that will result in lakes, in that ring with the sugar palms, in the lakes, and the soil water will go up even higher. So what have we now just created? We've created another fire prevention method, because in the dry season, when the water in the lakes go down, from the soil, all the water keeps flowing there. We've created a new aquifer that does not evaporate in the open air. We have created that supply there. But the water is also flowing from the highest point to the lowest, which is the ring outside. So the sugar palms continue to produce, all the crops that the people grow continue to have water, and that forest remains wet and continues to protect the forest in the middle against fires. So you have to combine those things. So, and this is now our rain machine, Samboja-Lestari, because if we look at the cloud cover area, so we compared semi-open, totally open, and the reforested area for the cloud cover. Now, the cooperation with these space agencies is very useful, because now we can actually measure what went on there. So let's have a look what has happened in those areas. Good. So what we did, we looked at all those images, and we looked at the reforested area, the semi-open and the open area, and then we looked, okay, there are so many clouds in the reforested area, so many in the grassland, so many in the open area. And once you start doing that for a few thousand of those images, so let me speed it up a bit, and you start comparing it, you can see that the red one, the open area, more often has fewer clouds than the area that we have reforested. And if you put that in a nice graph, you can see that we have increased cloud cover 11% over the open area by having these trees. And if we now look at the rainfall data, we can actually see that there is a systematic increase in rainfall above the forested area, because it's not just that there are more clouds, the trees are also the ones that exude mycist and terpenes from their leaves that become the condensation particles for raindrop formation. So we've truly created a rain machine, a machine that lets the clouds come and that stimulates the clouds to drop their water content. It's a combination. And let's have a look. Now this is in 2007, we did it again, and we found that after these 2 years, we had again a further change. So in the beginning, we only saw in the middle area that we had this increase of rainfall, but with the forest growing up, this umbrella of rainfall was widening. It means that now thousands of other farmers living around Samboja-Lestari can also benefit from more clouds and more rainfall. So now we've been plotting those rainfall figures on the map. Here's the city of Balikpapan, there's that open drain, here's Samboja-Lestari, that's zoomed in with that area, and that area has now become green and cool. Too much. Yeah, something is coming. So now let's see, we looked at all the rainfall data from around this area, and guess what? Exactly above Samboja-Lestari, you have this peak of increased rainfall. That's caused by that reforestation. We changed the climate. We absorbed a lot of carbon dioxide. Now when the trade winds come, there's a change. And when they reverse, you get the cloud and the rainfall over here. But after the wind changes, again, we see the same effect coming back in August and in September. So you can now quantify how much it's going to cost to save the climate. That's an important thing. People always need data. This here is Samboja-Lestari. Look, the rain clouds, they are only above the forest. Outside, no. We have truly made a rain machine. It's that simple. The theory that these biologists learn actually work. But all this science and the clouds do not help a lot if you don't have income. So in this case, and otherwise people will come back, steal timber again, burn it again, and the whole cycle starts from the beginning. Now this is too much, but we made all these maps for the rainfall and the water. We planned all these dams, and then we calculated how much it would cost to make this pipeline from this reforestation area to the city. And then we made all these nice designs and had the meetings. You see how interested those But you go one-on-one, and then the ambassadors and I don't know whatever. You do the presentations and you see a nice slide of somebody to the story. And then you start getting a little bit of interest, and you get them more aroused. You invite them to stay in that nice eco lodge and have a good dinner, and make sure there's some official from abroad there, so they all have to come. And then they start looking, and they're on the tower, and they look around from the tower where the machine is, and they can actually see it here from the window of my office. That what I've got on my screen is actually what you get. Who is he with? What you see is what you get. And then you get the data on the water quality. You do all these radar measurements, all that mapping on this electrical conductivity stuff, and you start designing your dams and all that stuff that people don't think have a lot to do with orangutans. Well, they do. Yeah, this is probably soon the only place where we truly safely can still let some orangutans around the tree, unfortunately. When you do all that work, okay, it's long enough, you make all the detailed planning. And you integrate that ring of lakes around the highest point where we have our office here. But now we have to see, so we have now the economic. That project was signed last Monday, so it's going to generate 1 million euros a year because that city doesn't have any water. 400,000 people now get healthy drinking water. We restored some climate, we created a few thousand jobs in the process, and we've created income. So the people who helped adopt square meters in that area have not just adopted another piece of land, no, they actually adopted that square meter. You can put a coin in there, come back 20 years, and with that GPS you will be able to find that coin and see if there are truly trees growing on your piece of land. Transparency is an important issue, but you now know that you have created something which is sustainable, not just aid, to help, but you have helped to create a system that can become sustainable, that can grow. This forest here does not only produce carbon credits and water, but it also produces sandwood, it produces ethanol from the sugar palms, it produces energy, it produces food crops, it produces about 700 different products. And we have all well, this is actually quite important, because what we do is creating a family. You have to involve the local people. The most important thing, besides all that science, is that our band, I like to play guitar with you guys, with dangdut music, and we go whenever somebody marries or there's a baby born, and we put up the generator, the lights, and play the music, so everybody is our family. And you don't do bad things against your family. That is actually the most important part. How to involve the local people, and how to have a band, of course. And we find that now that the health of the people is improving, and it looks all simple, but we use all this old equipment, but we had to start off with very difficult things like the firefighting, and this was our first office, right in the middle, on the top of that hill, and this is our office 2 years later. So I don't want anyone to say, yeah, but you guys had this or that. No, we started from zero. We created a zero-waste system. We started measuring rain, growing our trees, making these fire breaks, buying the land from the local people, measuring it. That's our meeting room, lots of flies. This was our first office in the whole area where we collected all this scientific data. We started building the small dams, and now we have created beautiful water coming out of this this forest, no more flooding, and year-round the rivers are flowing. But to begin is not easy in the grasslands. And why would these people believe you? They've heard so many stories of the government. Oh, now we're going to do this project, that project. So you cannot come for a project like this for just 3 or 4 years, as is always the project cycle. It has to be evaluated. If you do something like this, you have to come with a real commitment and be there for the long run to actually see and prove these benefits to the local people, that you are creating jobs. These are things, we should make a sign for that too, Richard. Those are all handicraft things that the local people now make. We brought somebody in from Yogyakarta how to do wood carvings, and that created jobs from the waste timber and the thinning timber. We let the children plant trees so that they would tell their parents, don't burn, because my tree might also get burned. We go to these schools and do all these education programs so that the children really understand it and become our biggest supporters. And then you have to have the monitoring with your satellites, your fire towers, your ultralights, and we measure. And now there's 100 sunbears living there. The orangutans are now living there, learning to climb the trees in the forest. And we have our clinic there, and now setting up an ethanol plant to start harvesting the energy from the sugar palms. And so we have an agroforestry school where we teach the people how to grow these protein-rich grasses in combination with what tree, what combinations of fruit trees will work well. And this was our example that I showed you in the beginning. But my students are doing a better job. You know why? Look at those holes. That's the secret. I was making compost, getting all this organic material, putting the bacteria, beautiful fertile soil. I would bring it to the planting holes. People said, but Willie, you're stupid. Why would we carry this stuff over there and then bring it back? So they make these holes, and what happens? All the leafy material accumulates in that hole, the water also, and you have now mini compost heaps. So now they just scoop out the fertilizer from those holes, and they put it around the plants. And the holes accumulate so much water that there is no erosion. All the water infiltrates in the soil. Simple holes. Wow. Bravo. Yeah, I didn't think of it. So, and now they're out doing it every time because they get the idea what it's about. And they start improving things. And this is the same spot. 23 crops later. The plants are now producing. We can now create thousands of new jobs from the producing palms. And all these other crops have grown there in between. Here they've planted rubber, the same place, 5 years later. They're tapping. They're selling the rubber, but there's rattan growing in between, all the fruit trees, there's all the medicinal plants. They get it. Unfortunately, this is how the people measure it. They have now more motorbikes, more new houses and stuff. Okay, that's a demographic thing. But what we mostly see now is that look at all the other areas. This is not our work anymore. It's the farmer groups that have been trained that are now being copied by other farmer groups. So if you now look at the satellite image, you see this one green blob and all these little splashes occurring around it. It's growing. The green area around it is growing from the people themselves. So, last few slides. We started off with this area, and then we made a ring road, which will give the people water and electricity produced locally. Then we have the zone with the sugar palms. We have this thorny fence that the orangutans can't go through and people don't like to go through. And the only job of the people is to make sure that that fence remains intact, and then inside we have that reforestation zone. So now what we do in the first year is we plant these shade trees and we plant a very valuable fence of hardwoods that the people cannot go from this side to this side. So anybody, any visitor, has to come from the roadside. Then we plant this fence, the sugar palms underneath, and the fence with the thorny palms. So now the trees start to grow up, and in about 8 years, just the time when those acacia trees, remember, are big,
Just the time when the bamboo peels are ready to smoke it, hey, the construction material for the people is available. So again, that matching in time, how to provide what product at what time. And now they can remove a number of the shade trees, and those farms that are in full light will now start producing 24,000 liters, how much is that? 8,000 gallons of fuel per hectare per year, the equivalent of 83 barrels of oil per hectare per year. And this is a scalable solution. So we don't need all these other difficult things and expensive things. We can better create more jobs. But one more thing. If the program is to last, there has to be fairness, and the people have to be the ones that are actually implementing this program. So you have to make sure it's culturally adapted, even if that means that you have to slaughter animals. I have to do horrible things to get this island, for example. Let me tell you another one. We have done everything. We had all those meetings with the people, and we have measured it, and there was compensation agreed, and we would be using the Kaja Island that you see on Orangutan Island, to use it for the orangutans. So I came there to sign the paper, and then the elders were sitting there and said, Willie, okay, we are ready. Okay, let's sign. No. What do you mean? No, we had a deal. No, yes, but the last thing, the leader has to talk to the gods. Talk to the gods. That wasn't in the contract. And he said, well, okay, what do I supposed to do? Well, he said, first is you have to spend the whole day from before sunrise till after sunset in the forest. You have to talk to our fine beings, the forefathers, the ghosts of this forest. And and the second thing, yes, you have to follow the steps of the giant. A giant? What giant? And the third thing, yes, the white crocodile must appear and give the signal, and then it will be yours. So I went to the island, and they gave me this root extract. I had to drink that. So I was sitting here and going around. And in the evening, in the dark, the boat came, and they picked me up again and brought me there to the elders, and sitting there. And I said, well, did you speak to the gods? Did you feel the fine beings? And I said, well, after you gave me the drink, did you hear the voices? Yes, I heard. Did it go like this? Yes, it did. Oh, great, you got it. How about the giant? Did you follow the steps of the giant? I said, well, I walked around the island and I saw these rocks there in the river, and they just look like giant footprints. Could that be? Yes, those are the steps. Fantastic. How about the white crocodile? I'm so sorry. It didn't show up, and does that mean we don't get the forest? And then the chief took me apart and said, actually, I've never seen it myself. Everybody else says they've seen it. You take the island. Sometimes it takes a bit more than just science. And the system has to be made in such a way that it cannot be corrupted, because corruption has unfortunately become part of the culture in my country. What we did here in Montserrat is that we set up these groups of farmers that are going to jointly manage it. So we want to distribute that ring of sugar palms. So people who sell the land, they get a piece of land back with sugar palms, more value, but they have to work in groups of 20. They've got like a little tiny district. And they have to make sure that the fence stays intact. And then, if one member of their group cuts a hole in the fence, and we see on our satellite images, hey, there a couple of trees have disappeared, we go to the group and say, sorry guys, but we had a great deal there, you get all this nice stuff, but one of your members, not good, and they have to find the hole, and they will find the hole in the fence. Very simple, because that's the only thing they need to do, keep that fence intact so the orangutans will stay inside. And they have to take the measures to decide what the punishment is going to be. If the group doesn't do it, the other 34 groups have to decide what is going to happen to the group that refuses to stick to the commitment. So you have to create those democratic structures. So we set up cooperatives. This is one of 6,285 members. By the way, this is my wife. She's the tribal queen of the Tombulu. And we use all the rituals. So let's see in summary. So in year one, we buy income. We buy land from the people so they get income and they get jobs in the construction and feeding orangutans and the security, etc. But they also make free use of the land in between the trees, or agroforestry. They can sell part of their produce to the project, and at the time that the sugar palms start producing, they get materials and they get a contract for the sugar sales, they have all the environmental benefits, they get a shared income from the endowment fund. Once that is complete, all the land is adopted, they get all these marketing benefits and etc., educational and health, and all of that depends upon you agree to keep that fence in good order. So what is that forest behind the fence? Is that an orangutan forest? No, it's their forest. That is the forest that provides all these people with a guaranteed better life. So if you try to come in as an outsider and want to steal a single tree, good luck. They're going to kill you. I don't need police. All I need is my satellite images to keep the control system going. So only if the local people benefit, our orangutans and nature will have a chance. It's the integration that does it. And if you want to read more about the project, then you can read this book that I wrote. Sorry. Thank you.